Hi creative friends, it's Ashley the Thrifty Chica, and today I'm answering one of your Cricut questions. This was asked by our wonderful group member Karen. Thank you so much, Karen, for asking this. And her question was, she wants to cut something that's a kind of thicker material using her Explorer Air 2, and she's not sure what setting to use. The whole process, like how do you determine what setting to use and if you have the right setting for each material. So she wants to cut something that's a little bit thicker. It's still underneath the 2mm size. That's the max thickness that you can use with the Explorer Air 2. So we're going to cut a thicker flat cardboard and kind of figure out, we're going to experiment to see what setting is the best for it. So she wants to cut something that's going to be a name with it, and I wanted to show you guys the process of how to figure out the right settings. So if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out. So the first step is making sure that we have the word that we're going to use for our test. So I went ahead and clicked on text. We're going to be using Cricut Sans because it's a nice, easy block font. This is a great font to kind of test out if you're trying to see how well something cuts, just because it's a nice, simple font. So if it comes out really well, then you know you have it kind of dialed down for the settings. So that's why I'm choosing this one. And I'm making it fairly large so we can really see how well this is going to turn out. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to run this one through and create a custom setting. We'll click on Make It. If you're using the Explorer Air 2, set your dial to custom and it will allow you to select a specific material. If you're using the Maker, it will automatically ask you this. So I'm going to select Browse All Materials. We're going to go to the bottom here where it says Material Settings on the bottom left. This brings up all of the standard materials that are for the Explorer Air 2. If you take a look at the Explorer Air 2, this has a ton of different settings. However, this is a thicker material than the standard one. So the settings are meant a lot of times for Cricut material specifically. So if you're working with something that's a little heavier or maybe a slightly different finish, you can create a custom setting by scrolling down to the bottom here and click Add New Material. You can create a custom material name for your project and then you can click on Save. Once you've created your material name, it will bring you to this little section where you can choose all of the options for your material settings. So it gives you a range of pressure settings from 100 to 350 based on what I've seen for cutting different materials. If you're working with the standard one, the flat cardboard that comes with Cricut materials, you can use the 306 setting because it's a thinner material, but we're working with a slightly thicker material, so I'm setting this to about 340. The reason for this is I've seen thicker materials do better probably around the 330 range to 350. So I'm going to try at 340. We're also selecting how many passes this makes, and that just refers to how many times it cuts the design. So for the first time, I'm going to set it pretty high because I really want to count and see. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and I'm going to count at the point where I see that it cuts off completely. So if that helps me to kind of get an idea of, okay, if it looks like it's cut through really well at the second time, the third time, the fourth time, then I know I can adjust my settings down. So I'm going to adjust it to 6 times. And it lets you select which blade you're using. We're going to be using the deep point blade rather than the fine point blade for, that was the standard for the thinner material. So deep point blade, we're going to click on Save. Now we can select which material we're using. We're going to go into our custom material settings. It'll say My Materials. Click on the material that you're using. And there's the option to adjust the pressure settings, but we're not going to mess with that because we want to really dial down the pressure settings for this particular material in case we want to use it again later. Make sure you load your deep point blade into clamp B, and let's go ahead and try this out. I'm going to be test cutting the cardboard sheet that's in the back of the cardstock that you buy from Cricut. Okay, so there's 4 wheels here. Just make sure that you move them out of the way of your project. If you're cutting basically on this section, you'll want to make sure they're out of the way towards the right there. Okay, we'll start the project. Already it cut through, but it looks like it was removing that piece quickly. So I stopped it so I could remove that piece and then continue.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together.
Okay, let's go ahead and unload it. So just taking a look at this, it did cut pretty cleanly on this setting. The big thing that I would make sure is that you're using the correct mat for this. I'm using an older mat, which is another reason I have this taped down, but it's usually recommended whenever you're using something that's a thicker material that you use the purple mat for it. So if you use a purple mat, those small pieces like the one that popped out here should stay on pretty well. I'm using an older mat, so it's not, but it looks like it cut really cleanly. The big thing that I would recommend whenever you're working with something that's a thicker material like this is just to make sure that you give it plenty of passes. It's not always about the pressure so much as making sure that you cut it multiple times so that way it cuts through as cleanly as possible. So let's go ahead and peel this off the mat and take a look at what it looks like up close. So here's a better close-up look at it. I have a feeling that if I flip this over, this is just going to pop right out. So let's go ahead and try that. Yep. Looks like it's popping right out. There's that. And it does give you a nice sturdy section. However, something to keep in mind that I'm noticing with this is it looks a lot cleaner on the back here than it does on the front. The front is clean, but because of your using the blade to cut, it gives a little bit more of a raised texture along the front here. So I think what I would do for the next one is to reverse the design. So that way when it cuts it, the piece that comes out that's the prettiest is the finished front section. So I'm gonna go ahead and retry cutting that again, but I'm gonna cut that using a few less passes, and I will also make sure to flip the design. I'll mirror the design so that way it does a little bit better with that. But you'll probably see the edges kind of roll up a little bit on that versus on the other side where it's a nice flat even result. But that's how it all turned out. So you can definitely play around with that to get the look that you want. And this is a nice, thicker, sturdier material, so you should be able to use that for different projects. So now we've done the first test cut. It gave us some valuable information we can use to adjust the project that we're working on and the settings. So I'm going to try doing a script font now because we've seen that it can cut through the block letters fine. So we'll click on text and I'm going to type in a script font. I'm going to go up to the top here and select a font to use. I'm going to type in the font Elizabeth. And this one is a very simple script font. It's a really great one to work with. And I'm going to go ahead and click Ungroup. We're going to move the letters over so that way they overlap. And remembering that for Karen's project, she wants to ultimately cut this in a script font. So that was my end goal, was to get to a point where we're creating a script font using that particular material. We're going to click on Group. And then I'm going to click on Weld down here in the bottom. Weld is, so basically all of the pieces will become one instead of being cut as individual pieces. When you weld it together, it tells the machine to cut this as a single piece. So this was ready to go. I'm going to adjust the sizing a little bit bigger so that it's pretty equal to the sizing of the other piece. And we're going to cut them both at the same time to really get a good feel for how this cuts. We'll click on Make It. And now something that we have noticed with our first test cut is that the bottom section of it when you cut gave a much cleaner result than it did on the top. So I want to make sure that I mirror our design. And that way, by mirroring it, it flips the design and we'll get the cleaner result along where the front would be of it rather than the back. So we're going to click continue. We're also going to make sure that we're using our purple matte because this will give us a much nicer result because it will stick the project to it better. We're going to click Browse All Materials, and now we need to adjust the setting. We know that the setting is slightly off. It's close, but not quite. We'll click on Material Settings, and we're going to go to the one that we created ourselves. So the test with flat cardboard, I'm going to click on Edit. And I know that this many passes is too much. We could get away with probably 4 or 5. So you can select whichever one you think is the best option for it. So I'm going to select 5 for this one. The pressure setting seemed pretty accurate on that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And we're going to click Done. Now we can go in and choose the material setting that we want. We're ready to load this into the machine, and let's see how well this does. So I'm breaking out a basically brand new mat for this one. This is the Strong Grip mat with the heavy duty adhesive. We're going to test another one of these out here. And I have another backing from a different type of cardstock back here. And I'm just gonna make sure I place this on. You can also use a roller if you need something to press this down so that way it really stays in place. And if we want to just add extra adhesive, we can do that as well. I'm pretty sure this is going to stay pretty well since this is a brand new mat. I'm not too worried about it, but let's go ahead anyway. I want to give this the same conditions basically as the other except for the mat. Now we're going to open our machine up again. I'll make sure to double check the blade that it's nice and clear. Before we use it, we want to make sure that there's no debris on it. So it looks good. So we're going to try this same test on something with more adhesive on the mat to see, this is basically the best conditions we can give this. So the wheels are to the right and it's ready to go.
So beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. You and me meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
Okay, we're ready to unload this. Let's close up our machine and take a look at the results. Okay, so this is what it looks like once it's finished. You can see that it gave you a much cleaner result using the correct mat for this. So definitely recommend always using the correct mat, especially when you're cutting thicker materials. Let's go ahead and remove this from the backing so we can really take a look at it. And before I do that, I want to give you guys a better up close look. So here's a real in-depth up-close look, because I know that's what counts, especially when we're working with super fine settings. We want to make sure that we get the right quality level. So you can see a little bit of fraying on these corner pieces. Let's see if that impacts the design on the front. But let's go ahead and first remove this from the mat. I'm just going to peel up these tape strips on the side, flip it over, and we're going to peel this off the backing by rolling this. So as you can see, it does give you that faint outline in the backing of here, but it doesn't cut through, which is fine. That won't impact anything. So that's what it looks like on the other side. It looks like it cut very cleanly on the other side. Let's take a look at the finished parts, because that's what really matters, is making sure that we get the finished process here. And as you can see, I specifically chose a script font because I wanted you guys to see, even if something is very delicate, if it's possible to cut it and work with it. And as you can see, that's pretty delicate, but still it does give you that result. So it looks like it cut very cleanly on this side, which is awesome. And let's take a closer look at the other side. This is one of the ones that has a white coating on the back side of it, but it is still the same cardboard type of material. It looks like it cut pretty well across there. I don't see any major problems with it. And this right here was just the coloring, since this was sitting in my bin there. Okay, there's that one. And as you can see, it did an excellent job with these type of pieces here. So you can see that it really does, it shines, especially when you're doing pieces that are a little bit more simple. You can really get a nice crisp look on those. So I do think that the standard fonts are the easiest ones to cut. However, you can cut ones like this as long as you take the proper precautions with using the right mat for it. So you definitely need a sticky mat. This was the strong grip mat, and then I taped it down, and I just made sure to play around with the settings before I was cutting them, so that I would get the perfect settings for this material. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't yet, make sure to like, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future content. If you'd like to see some of my live classes, check out the link in the description box and it'll take you straight to my Facebook group. It's a wonderful community filled with other crafters who love crafting on a budget, and we do classes on Saturdays, so I'd love to see you there. I hope you're having a wonderful day.